All right, greetings and welcome back once again. This is Amuna, and I pray everybody is doing well on this Sunday evening. I did say I was going to come back, right? So I'm going to go ahead and jump into it. If you missed part one, you're going to have to check it out. Again, this book is available on Amazon, link in the description. I'm just going to read a little bit through because we're trying to get some new information, some new names to throw in this here February, a Black History Month, right? So we learned about Drew. What was his name again? John Drew Bus Line. It was the first African American to own a bus line, okay, in the early 1900s. So I'm on the prologue now, so let's continue. On a warm night in 1841, William Alexander Lee's Destroff, okay, if that's his name, sat on the porch of an old white house covered in vines in New Orleans with his fiancée, Hortense. You know, that's an old school name. Hortense was the name of the fiancée. And again, why am I doing this? This is an extension of the Left Project. I started that about 7 years ago, reading a lot of the narratives that oftentimes don't get read. It is my understanding and observation that we speak from a position of presumptuousness most times, right? Saying what the ancestors would have felt and what they would have done. And they left some things on record, right? So it is my one of my missions to bring voice to some of these things, as well as promote us, we the people of today, writing our stories down. Black, white, yellow, green, write your stories so that when the other nations come, the other generations, they will have something to go off of. So let's continue. Where are we? Hortense, Hortense. As she leaned on Liederstroff, hopefully I'm saying that correctly, she could tell that something was bothering him. Hortense looked into his heavy-lidded auburn eyes. "What is troubling you, William?" she asked, looking up at him with her big blue framed by blonde curls. Against her better judgment, he confided in her. That was a little clumsy. It's either me reading it clumsily or something, but okay, we got through that. He stammered as he tried to get the words out. He finally told her. Hortense's eyes filled with tears. Now, the way he's setting this storyline up, this is 1841. William, the way he describes him, he may be mixed, right? Because Hortense has big blue eyes, she has blonde curls, and he's hesitating. There was a lot of people who were passing, especially if they got their melanin and their skin was lessened, and there's a whole culture of people who were able to pass. So let's continue. As she stood in his what is wrong with me tonight? Rewind. As she took in his confession, she scanned his features. Yep, I told you. He had a round, pale face with a straight nose, ruddy cheeks, piercing, deep-set brown eyes, bushy sideburns, that should have let Hortense know something was up, and curly brown hair that wore slick black with oil. Yeah, he was hiding it under the pomade. As he cried, he confessed that he was from the Virgin Islands, the son of a Jewish Danish sailor and merchant and a Black Island woman. He had been passing for white since he had arrived in New Orleans from the Caribbean as a boy, rising from working on the docks to commanding a ship in his mid-20s. So Hortense was trying to holler at him because he had a little something going on. He had some money. He wasn't just broke, right? So Hortense saw his hair slicked back and he was tall, dark, and handsome. Okay. And Hortense got herself wrapped up. You see that? And then what happened here? What happened here? Hortense plunged her face into the sleeve of his velvet jacket, and he was well dressed too, and sobbed heavily. "My father will never let us marry, and I cannot deceive or disobey him. Our dream as ended." Sorry, I'm reading like a Jamaican. It's late, y'all. That you see, I said ended. Yo, my bad. "Our dream has ended, but I will love you as long as I live," he said. So they already knew it was a no-go. That was dangerous. This is before slavery is even ended. This is 1841. Oh yeah, this is not going to work. Okay? Go, you must go, Hortense told Liderstorff. His name is off the chain. My heart will always be with you. See, now she got the love in her heart. Hortense is gonna go off and marry somebody, John Smith or somebody. She's gonna have how many children, but her heart is always gonna be with this hidden love. What's his first name? Can I call you by your first name? William, William Alexander. Her heart is always going to be with William Alexander. These are stories, like I said, that is important to note, even when we're talking about success. Because right now I'm reading from Black Fortunes, and behind that is the people's personal lives, right? I came across some information similar to someone having a love in their heart, but they couldn't be with that person. And so they settled and they ended up being with who was acceptable in society. That's something to consider when we talk about the experiences that we have beyond that, right? So let's continue. Yeah, I'm fumbling a little bit tonight, but we're gonna continue. We're gonna continue. Where am I here? So Hortense is like, Pops is not gonna have it. Anyway, run, William. I must tell my father. Dang, Hortense, you can't be trusted. How you gonna tell William to run and you gonna tell the father? Can you at least wait till William gets out of town? Just wait. Why are you so pushy? See? What was William doing with Hortense anyway? These are the questions. But anyway, she shouted after him as he retreated into the night. Yo, Hortense came from an aristocratic New Orleans family that owned slaves and would strongly disapprove of Hortense marrying a man of color. But they used to do a lot of kind of stuff like this down in Orleans. After, oh gosh, Leah Desdorf, his name is throwing me off, William Alexander. After he left, she went inside the house. Dang, she didn't give him any time, did she? Hortense, man. Wait a minute, he was on the porch? Hold on, let me go back. Hold on, let me go back. Okay, they were on the porch, yep, of an old white house covered in vines in New Orleans with his fiance. So you know what, William? This is kind of off because you shouldn't have waited till you proposed to the woman. If she's your fiance, her family had to accept you already. That's kind of OD. You should have kind of told her before. And she didn't even give you any time. She said, run. And then she going to go in there and tell. She could have at least waited to the next night. She's not Macabre from David and Saul at all. He says, go. You must go, Hortense, told William Alexander. My heart will always belong to you. Run, William. I must tell my father, she shouted after him as he retreated into the night. Hortense came from an aristocratic New Orleans family that owned slaves and would strongly disapprove of Hortense marrying a man of color. After William Alexander left, she went inside the house and told her father about him. She should have given him some more lead time. You ain't love him that much, bro. These guys got dogs. Incensed, he was pissed. Her father announced that the wedding was off. Okay, I think they kind of figured that much. Dragged her to the door of her room. Dang, Pops. Pushy much, and pushed her inside. You will never see that blink again. He called him a ninja. You'll never see that ninja again, he swore, turning the key and locking her. Yo, Pops, what is really good? Did he just lock Hortense inside the room according to the book? All of this is in the book on the screen, so if it looks interesting to you, link is in the description. The next day, his name is throwing me off, so I'm going to just call him William, received a package from Hortense's father with the engagement ring inside and decided to leave New Orleans. He sold everything he owned and purchased a ship. Hey, he had some kesef. He sold everything and bought a boat. The day before he was to leave the city, he was walking down Canal Street and was passed by a funeral procession. He stood in the doorway of the store and watched the mourners go by. He spotted Hortense's mother, father, and sister in one of the carriages, and his heart sank. That night, there was a knock at the door. When he opened it, he was greeted by a priest. The man handed William a small gold cross which he immediately recognized as Hortense. Yo, what in all of Romeo and Juliet was going on with Hortense? Hortense was like, oh my goodness, lady. Hortense, you could at least, he's from the Caribbean. You could have just hopped on the boat and went there. Extreme. Hortense's last words were that she wanted you to have this. The priest told him, okay, Hortense, you was committed. In 1841, Leidestroff left New Orleans. He sailed to California, then a remote territory, Mexican territory. As he stepped off the gangplank of his ship in Yerba Buena Cove, he saw a backwater of thick forest and green hills dotted with Indian communities. Stick with us because we're going somewhere. Remember, this is about how he makes his fortune. So if he didn't have that misstep with Hortense, maybe he would have stood in, what a place called? Y'all know the place. Maybe he would have stayed in New Orleans. But all of that happened, so he decides, yo, I'm out. You understand? He goes to California. It continues. He saw forts, cattle farms, and Catholic missions. Deciding he would live openly as a mixed race man, he finally ready to embrace himself, eh? He settled in San Francisco and started an import-export company shipping tallow and animal pelts from California to Hawaii and Alaska. See, he decided to tap into his authentic voice. Once that business turned a profit, he used the money to open a general store, a warehouse, a lumberyard, a shipping building business. He also built San Francisco's first hotel. San Francisco had very few inhabitants at the time. Leidestroff, his name is throwing me off, still trying to mend his broken heart, seemed to relish the isolation. And this also goes to show you that sometimes you can be really good in business and you're channeling all of your energy into enterprise because you're lacking something in your personal life. And this is why sometimes you see business owners, they'll have all of what everybody else says, they will do anything to have, but they're not happy because that energy that they're using to build economically sometimes is overage from where they're not able to feel fulfilled. So yes, they're getting what they want, but it's not in a balanced way. And that's what's going on with William Alexander right now. Let's see here. How's everybody doing today, by the way? I hope you're doing well. Where we at? So anyway, he built the first hotel in San Francisco. He didn't build the first Black-owned hotel. He built the first hotel. San Francisco had very few inhabitants at the time. William Alexander, still trying to mend his broken heart, seemed to relish in the isolation. His only friends were his employees, a bartender at his hotel, and his Black laundress. At night, they would go down to the beach on the northern coast of San Francisco to swim. Sometimes they'll sit on the rocks, looking up at the moon, and talk until the sun came up, listening to the waves crash on the shore. Because all work and no play, right? So after work, he didn't have anybody. It looks like his mother is back in the Virgin Islands. At that time, Virgin Islands is Danish rule, I think, if I'm not mistaken. It doesn't become USVI till later. His mother I believe, is back there. His father is a Jewish-Danish sailor, merchant guy. And he over here passing. Then he relocates, and now his only friends are the people who work for him. In 1844, William, then Mexican California's most prominent resident, it's not me being awkward, it's the way he wrote it. Then Mexican California's most prominent resident was granted citizenship by the Mexican government. In return for his allegiance, Mexico gave him more than, are y'all ready for this? Just listen for this. 35,000 acres of undeveloped land. What? So he sells all he has, the little engagement ring and everything else. He buys a ship. He sails to California. Okay, he goes over there. He starts business. He's a pioneer. And then Mexico is like, no worries. I'm going to give you citizenship. They give him 35,000 acres of undeveloped land. His acquisition made him the largest landowner in the area, so he has political power. After that, he built a large mansion in the hills of San Francisco, which he referred to with tongue-in-cheek as the cottage. That's funny. His house was a New Orleans-style home with dozens of rooms and a wraparound porch, kind of like the one he was standing on when he told Hortense that he was really a Negra. His house was a New Orleans home with dozens of rooms and a wraparound porch, and the state's only flower garden. Okay? His estate functioned as de facto U.S. embassy in Mexico. This guy in Mexican California territory. In Mexican, I guess before the time, I don't know why he wrote in Mexican California. Anyway, a con. Yeah, y'all see with me. Y'all see with me. Okay, he received generals and politicians at his residence. He served his guests beer and meat and offered them cigars. So he was a host. He apologized for not having better whiskey, which was hard to come by in the West. We get what we can get, he would tell them. Would you like some tequila? And by the way, I think they say tequila is better than the other stuff anyway, but he spoke with a strange accent, a mix of his father's Danish, his mother's Caribbean patois, and a southern drawl. Interesting. In 1846, when Mexico went to war with the United States, he switched his allegiance to the Americans and was appointed United States Vice Consul to Mexico. After the Mexican-American War ended and the U.S. annexed California, the U.S. government made him the treasurer of the territory. In 1847, he built California's first public school. How many people know about him? I'm going to type his name in the room because I keep messing it up. My apologies, sir. You did your thing. Okay. He built California's first public school and a horse racing track for the citizens' entertainment. In 1848, when gold was discovered in the Sacramento Valley, the value of his property and business skyrocketed to over $1 million, making him the first African American to achieve a net worth of more than $1 million, in the history of the United States. He's the very first. How many people have heard of his name before? One spring night, Liederstroff retired to bed in his quarter on the top floor of his mansion. The next morning, doctors pronounced him dead of brain fever. Flags in San Francisco were hung at half-mast, and Californians wept for the loss of one of their most beloved. After his death, Joseph Folsom, a real estate investor, traveled to Virgin Islands. This part y'all got to hear. This part you got to hear because this is something that happens and has happened. This guy, he's the first melanated millionaire in United States history. Okay? But he doesn't have an heir. He loved Hortense. Hortense took herself out. Okay? He goes off. He invests himself in business. It doesn't say he has any children. After his death, Joseph Folsom, a real estate investor, traveled to the Virgin Islands, found Liederstroff's estranged mother, Anne Marie Sparks, his sole known heir. He convinced her to sign over her son's property for a payment of $75,000. You hear the man is worth, you see the wickedness? The man was worth over $1 million. He was there before the gold rush, the first hotel. He has all type of political standing. This Joseph Folsom runs to go try to find his only heir, which is his mother, pays her a pittance of $75,000. And the Liederstroff estate was worth more than $1.4 million, which is $38 million in today's space and time. So this guy basically robs her because she's none the wiser. With the stroke of a pen and thievery. What page am I on? I'm on page 4. I am reading the prologue, The First Black Millionaire. It's on page 4. Right now it's page 5. We're coming up to chapter 1. So the Liederstroff estate was worth more than $1.4 million, $38 million today. With the stroke of a pen, this thief-in man named Joseph Folsom, the fortune and legacy of America's first black millionaire was stolen. You're welcome, Kia. I mean, are we giving this history? We need to give this history. Now I need to go see if we can see him. Joseph Folsom, and sometimes people Sometimes people's family experiences some misfortunes, quote unquote, and you don't know why. Why is this going on? He could have done that then, and for the next 3 generations, somebody was always robbing Joseph Folsom's family. We don't know, and they might be like, "Yo, why is this the case?" It's because your father was a thief. Your father was a thief. That's probably why. I'm trying to see something, y'all. Y'all know I got to do some investigation real quick while I'm live. Your father was a thief, sir. Because why would you do that? Why would you do that? Because the thought is, what does she know? We don't learn about him in February. Okay, they got a picture here of William Alexander Leaderstone. So let's look. Let's look. Shall we look? Okay. Share the screen. This is the picture they have of him. William Leaderstoff. His name is throwing me off. Jeez, I'm bred, yo. Let me see how they say his name. Because I don't like keep saying his name crazy. The first black millionaire. And I can't get his name right. Be like, sister, say my name. Say my name. Hold on, let me hear how they say it. Why are we not pressing play? There he go. Oh, no wonder he tricked Hortense. He kind of do look like he could pass. No wonder if this is really him, no wonder Hortense got. Yeah, I could see it. I could see it, Hortense. I could see it. You had no idea. Let's see. He was one of the earliest biracial black U.S. citizens in California, and one of the founders of the city of San Francisco. Highly successful, enterprising businessman. He was a West Indian immigrant of African, Cuban. Where they got Cuban from? Possibly Carib, Danish, Swedish, and Jewish ancestry. Leidesdorf became a U.S. citizen in New Orleans in 1834. He migrated to Alta California in 1841, then under Mexican rule, settling in Yerba Buena, now San Francisco, a village of about 30 Mexican and European families. So here's somebody, I could see how Hortense got. When the baby popped out, Hortense pops probably would have knew something. And then they're going over some of the stuff that we went over before. They say he was from St. Croix, which at that time, I don't think it was USVI, but then, it becomes USVI. He was in Christensen, St. Croix. Yep, when it was Danish West Indies. So he's half Jewish, half quote unquote black, right? And his mother, who's his only surviving heir, she gets got. See, mother's Anna Marie Sparks was described in one account as a Carib Indian woman. Then if his mother was Carib, then his mother was an indigenous then. She was believed also to have had African and European ancestry. Her race was noted in a census report. Many people observed that what we call Carib people had a various skin hues that likely reflected mixed ancestry. Carib is usually the natives, ranging from dark brown to lighter shades of brown, resulting in a Virgin Island Creole to which she may have belonged. They thought she was born in Cuba. Very interesting. I'm just jumping down here. Let me see something. He was baptized, okay. In 1837, Leidesdorf Sr. officially adopted all 4 of his children from Anne Marie Sparks to give them legal standing by Danish law. Oh, so wait a minute. He seated her up 4 different times? Hold on. Okay. Let's see here. Very interesting. If you want to learn, okay, here we go, right here on the plaque. Memorial in San Francisco. Okay, right here he looks melanated in this picture. The first picture, somebody was trying to make him look more Euro, but right here, it's clear to see. Let me click this right here. It's clear to see in this one. Uh-oh. He built the city's hotel, the first hotel in San Francisco, and the first commercial shipping warehouse, the latter at which became Leadersdorf Street. Hold on. And then he got a land grant. So this is basically saying all the stuff we just read in the book. They say he had typhoid fever. Okay. All right. Oh, okay. U.S. Route. If you're from that area, tell us more. U.S. Route 50, they say in West Sacramento, California, is dedicated to him along the boundary of the historic Leadersdorf Ranch. So I guess if you live on that side of the country, you would know about him. If you live on different places, maybe you will not know about him. So he even has a memorial highway named in his honor, 15 miles of highway. The first. The first. Here we go. Here go Folsom. Here go Folsom. Teeth in Folsom. Let's see right quick what they say about Folsom. Hold on. Settlement of estate. Joseph Folsom. 1849, Folsom took leave from the U.S. Army, located Leadersdorf's mother and some of his siblings in the West Indies. Folsom signed a note to purchase for Anna Spark title to her son's estate for 70. What a wicked man. What a wicked man. He paid her a deposit with the promise of 2 more installments. He didn't even pay the whole thing. Are you kidding me? He returned to San Francisco. Land prices were rising. Government challenged his purchase, as Anna Sparks legally had no claim to it. A California state government claim was brought because under old Mexican law that foreigners could not inherit property. The dispute was brought to the courts where legal entanglements over the conflict of Mexican, American, and Danish laws kept it for over 10 years. The uncertainty of new probate laws combined with the fact that William Leadersdorf thought he had held federal offices. He was trying to be slick. You see this? Held dual Mexican and U.S. citizenship further complicated the property issues. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Hold on, I'm scanning. Let's see what ultimately the following happened, because the book didn't tell us. The claims of Leadersdorf's West Indian relatives were thrown out of court. The evidence of relationship was rejected as they were not American citizens. They were not considered to have standing. 2, no recognized Danish family or individual of the name of Leadersdorf appeared to claim the estate of William Leadersdorf of San Francisco. 3, the statute of limitation covered and protected every title obtained by Joseph L. Folsom and others who later acquired. What? You see this? That's wild. Okay, people, I've satisfied my curiosity on that. That was the first melanated millionaire, according to what has been left on record. So let me see here. Let me let go the screen. Let's go a little bit more. How much time I'm running on? Yeah, we got time. Let me see what's here. I'm probably gonna read up to 13 because now we're gonna jump into it. But that's not the first, second, or third time that we see people acquiring wealth, especially melanated people, and then that some way, somehow, once they pass, there is no intergenerational wealth, the ability to pass down the wealth that has been acquired to their offspring. Some way, somehow, it goes back. And it's not to who it's supposed to go back to. And that's starting from the jump, which is very interesting. But let me just read a few pages here. All right. This says August 12th, 1841. I'm on page 9. The sun was warm, and the air smelled of the salt water on the sandy coast of Nantucket on August 12th, 1841. On a dirt road lined with trees and hedges, in a library known as the Nantucket Athenaeum. Hopefully I said that right. The town's first abolitionist convention came to order. 500 men and women took their seats, most of them local Quakers. Okay. The men in plain dark colored suits with broad hats, the women in gray or brown dresses with bonnets. The Athenaeum had once been a church and retained an exterior of white wood and stone with stained glass windows and two stone columns at its entrance. They're going in here. Inside was a great room filled with benches of carved wood, bookshelved, old paintings on the wall. From a platform in the back, William C. Coffin, a local abolitionist, made an announcement. There was a fugitive slave in attendance, and he was going to give a speech. Yo, what kind of announcement? Yo, bro, we don't even know if he got spies in the spot. What kind of announcement is that, though? It wasn't all of Hortense. Y'all got to keep that down. Heads swiveled as Frederick Douglass stood up. It didn't say stood up, hell. Stood and made his way towards the stage. You notice how you want to read stuff and then put words you think the author should have put there? He did not say stood up, he said stood. He was tall with a muscular frame that showed through his shirt and vest, a square jaw, and a clean-shaven face. His hair coiled dark and parted and pushed apart his forehead. What? Across his forehead and down toward his ears. He had a little swoop vibration going on. He had some baby hair action, and he had a part in the middle, and then he just swooped it like with some black gel and then put it behind his ears. That's how I'm imagining what he's saying, okay? If he took the time to describe it, I'm taking the time to imagine. As he moved to the front of the room, members of the audience could see that he was shaken from stage fright. And I think the story of Frederick Douglass is up from slavery. I have that one over there as well. Later on, he chronicles his experience. But, during this time, a lot of people start going on the network because they were having a whole lot of meetings during the abolitionist time. So they was printing papers, they were raising money, they were out here doing the most. It started getting really heated. So they needed to legitimize what they were doing. It's like the Sojourner Truth, Aren't I a Woman conversation. When you actually had a quote unquote fugitive or you had an ex-slave, for the Europeans who were doing the whole abolitionist movement, it legitimized their movement because you got a real life nigger in the midst. You understand? Yeah. Where we at? Let me know if you guys are enjoying this so far. I am, but where are we? Douglass, who was 23 years old, had escaped from slavery in Maryland 3 years earlier. He now lived in New Bedford, Massachusetts, and worked as a brass foundry. He was a preacher at the African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church in his town. That was a tongue twister. But had never spoken to an audience of more than a few dozen, nor had he much experience speaking in front of white people. Okay. Douglass had come to Nantucket for a working vacation, hoping to stay abreast on the goings on in the abolitionist struggle, but more to relax on the island, looking out on the Atlantic Ocean. Needing a day or two of rest, I attended this convention, never supposing that I should take part in the proceedings, he recalled. Until now, I had taken no holiday since my escape from slavery. He's like, man, I ain't even had no time to relax. Since I escaped, I've been working. It's just a different type of working. When Coffin asked him to come to the stage, he was so overcome with fear that he could barely keep his feet underneath him. As he took the stage, he felt ill. That stage fright, okay? He summoned all his willpower to keep his back straight and his limbs steady. Then he began. So the great Frederick Douglass had stage fright. His voice trembled as he shook. What is wrong with me? Do I need some more light? As he spoke of being born and raised on a plantation in Maryland. He stuttered as he described enduring backbreaking labor and brutality at the hands of overseers. The audience hung on his every word. One of the attendees recalled, Flinty hearts were pierced, and cold ones melted by his eloquence. Our blessed pleaders for the slave held their breath for fear of interrupting him. Because this was the entertainment for the day as well. There was no TV or YouTube, you know what I mean? So you had to actually go to meetings and have these experiences. You were either reading into the book, reading a newspaper, or going to meetings. And, when Douglass finished, the well-known abolitionist, William Lloyd Garrison, a slim man with thinning hair, leaped onto the center stage. Like, he was one of the key guys who ran the paper, The Liberator. And he was the one during this time, him and others, that caused the second wave of the black codes to be enforced, where we see it illustrated in Roots, where they don't want you to, Kizzy, is that you reading? That came from what was going on here. So they were all interconnected. The fact that all of this literature was going out, speaking against the institution of slavery. So the country was really splitting for a good 20, 30 years before the Civil War came in, right? And so these type of things were now considered contraband. And so this, even having these type of meetings in the North, was problematic. And some of these teachers and abolitionists were coming to the South, educating melanated people, and and ruining good Negroes, according to the narrative. And so this was really revolutionary at the time. Let's see here. So William Lloyd Garrison, he praised Douglass and sermonized on the evils of slavery, whipping the crowd into a fury. Have we been listening to a thing, a piece of property, or a man? He demanded. He was the hype man. He jumped on the stage like, hey, motioning towards Douglass. A man, the audience cried back in unison. A man. Shall such a man be held a slave in a Christian land? Garrison demanded. No, no, the audience shouted back, seeming to make the rafters shake. Douglass himself, moved by Garrison, recalled, for a moment, a public meeting is transformed, as it were, into a single individuality. The orator wielding 1,000 heads and hearts at once, and by the simple majesty of his all-controlling thought, converting his hearers into the express image of his own soul. I know you're probably like, where did the Black Fortune come in? We just I didn't write this one. I know it's doing a Namuna, but hey, we just rolling with it. The crowd was at a fever pitch, and Garrison continued, raising his voice. Shall such a man ever be sent back to bondage from the free soil of old Massachusetts? He motioned towards Douglass again. No, 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 the audience jumped to their feet and shouted. The noise poured out of the building and could be heard in the streets. I'm going to stop on 13 because I'm fumbling over my words this evening. But we getting there, though. We're going to keep going. Afterward, as the conversation let out, I should go by my desk. Maybe that's the problem. After the convention let out, a crowd of men and women formed around Douglass who were eager to shake his hand, thump him on the back, and compliment him on his speech. When the crowd finally dissipated, a group of Nantucket prominent Black citizens, led by Edward J. Pompey, a free Black whaler, industrialist, and ship commander, approached Douglass, brimming with pride. So that's a name to look up, Edward J. Pompey. Okay. The group was from Newton, Nantucket's Black district, where Douglass was lodging. They escorted him out of the church and down a road past a fence that segregated Newton from the rest of the town. So wait a minute, how they having an abolitionist convention against slavery and they in segregation? Mm-hmm. The walk from Athenaeum to Newton took 15 minutes as the group walked south, passing first the rest of the town, then a cow pasture, and finally a fence made of wood planks. Above Newton was a set of large windmills, and to the south a settlement of displaced Wampanga Indians who lived in the wilderness of the island coast. It's interesting. Okay? Yeah. You over here having meetings and okay. Newton was a cluster of houses erected along a grid of 11 streets. Prominent among them was Angola Street, an illustration of residents' African heritage. The center of the enclaves was the African Meeting House, a square building with a gable roof, gray wood siding, and wood plank fence surrounding it. The African Meeting House was where Nantucket's black residents attended church and school, and on occasion is hosted African American visitors such as Douglas. That night, Douglas stayed up talking with the island's black residents, who also included the wealthy black whaling captain Absalom, Absalom Boston, and the leading black families of the island. So this is what year is this? So people, some who had gotten their freedom, some who were born free, they were even before the end of slavery, they were enterprising. And as we talked about in the last episode of this, the whaling industry at that time was huge. So far he encounters two men, melanated men, who are well to do in the town that he's staying in, right? When morning came, Douglas left Newton to attend the second day of the convention at the Athenaeum. Excitement about his speech seemed to have grown overnight. And when he entered the hall, people crowded around him, thumping his back and showering him with adulation. I thought, didn't they thump his back yesterday? Why you keep hitting me in my back, fam? The next day, he returned to mainland Massachusetts, where William Lloyd Garrison offered him a job. What? As a traveling speaker for the Massachusetts Anti-Slavery Society. Now here go Douglas looking a gift house in the mouth. I doubt anybody would want to hear me speak. Bro, they just came and they came back. Like, stop. Just go, just talk to them. Douglas told Garrison. Nonetheless, he accepted the offer and began traveling the country, telling his story as he had in Nantucket. In the following months, Douglas rose to fame as an abolitionist and an orator. So, for those who didn't know, and now we know that William Lord Garrison, who quote unquote put him on and had him go out there and do his Umar Johnson thing, right? His time. Why did I just say Umar Johnson? Oh, I'm a descendant. Sorry. His time on the island catapulted him to prominence and also galvanized the African American community there. Among them was a young woman who would become one of America's most powerful black entrepreneurs, Mary Ellen Pleasant. That took us forever and 2 days to get to Mary Ellen, right? But let's check out who Mary Ellen Pleasant is. That took a minute, but it had to give the backstory. You see why it's important to give backstory to the best of your ability so that we can get a broader understanding of why this person is about to be important. Sometimes we want to get to the mood of the just get to it, but you won't have an appreciation if you just get to it. Oh yeah, Mary Ellen Pleasant. Let's take a look at Mary Ellen before we jump into this. Let me give you guys Mary Ellen before we jump in here. Do. Here she is. Google search. And that's how I like to there she is. Let me just get to the image here. We're about to read about her. How many people know about Mary Ellen? There she goes. So let's read a little bit about Mary Ellen here. Mary Ellen, I don't know. I'm trying to read your eyes, Mary Ellen. I don't know what's going on with you. Let me see something here. Her eyes is saying something. Let's read a little bit about her story. They say the eyes is the window to her soul. There's a sadness in her eyes, but let's let's read a little bit about Mary here. I'll keep her on the screen so that we could see who we talking about here. Okay. In 1814, in an apartment in a three-story brick building on a stone street near Philadelphia's dock, Mary Ellen Williams entered the world. She was born free and black. Her parents christened her Mary Ellen Williams. So she's born in Philadelphia in 1814, okay? And she's free. Important to note. Taking her mother's first name and her father's last name. My parents were a strange mixture. My father was a native Kanaka and my mother a full-blooded Louisiana negress. She recalled. Pleasant had her mother's brown skin and wavy hair and her father's tall stature and Polynesian features. Her father, a silk merchant named Louis Alexander Williams, was larger than life in her memory. He was a man of great intelligence. He was like most of his race, a giant. Her mother did not leave a lasting impression on her. I was named after my mother, but I really recall little else about her, Pleasant said. Pleasant's time with her parents in their apartment was brief. They sent her to live on the island of Nantucket when she was 7 years old to attend school. Like many free states, Pennsylvania was both anti-slavery and anti-integration. Black children like Pleasant were not welcome in Philadelphia schools. In most free states during the antebellum era, there were no school options for African American children. In Nantucket and Cincinnati, private, quote, color schools, end quote, had been established where parents and sponsors could buy education for Black children. In 1826, Williams took Pleasant on a steamship to live with an associate of his, an island family called the Hussies, while she attended school on the Massachusetts inland. So they ship her off to boarding school at 7 years old. I'm telling you, I see some sadness in Mary Ellen's eyes. You know what I mean? I could go into the solonomics of it, but I'm going to continue. The Hussies were one of Nantucket's best known and most powerful families. Members of their clan had controlling interests in most of the town's institutions, including the Religious Society of Friends, the formal name for the Quaker Church, and local government and industry. They owned several houses and businesses spread across the island. Williams, a traveling fabric merchant, likely knew them as business associates. If he had known the Hussies more intimately, he perhaps would have known that they had a reputation for being dishonest. An old Nantucket verse described the Hussies, quote, the Rays and the Russells Coopers are, the knowing Folgers lazy, a lying coalman very rare, and scarce an honest Hussie. Hey. So they did not have an honest reputation, eh? When Pleasant arrived on Nantucket, she was put in the care of Mary Hussie, an elder Quaker woman who dressed in bonnets and long skirts. Call me Grandma Hussie. First of all, let me focus. She told Pleasant, Grandma Hussie ran a store in a wood building located beneath a grassy hill by the town's pier, a stone's throw away from the Athenaeum. From the window, one could see sailors and merchants working away on ships and moving around about drums of whale oil. After Williams left Pleasant in Hussie's care, Grandma Hussie decided not to send Pleasant to school and instead made her work in her store. Well, it didn't take long for you not to do what you were supposed to do, eh? My father, as I afterwards learned, sent money every year for my education. But as I was an unusually smart girl and quick at everything, they kept me at work in the store. Pleasant resented being kept out of school, but it was an early lesson about power dynamics in the antebellum era. I envy children who can write a good hand and spell correctly, and blame the Hussies for not giving me an education, she later said. The Hussies were rich and white, and although Pleasant was privileged to have been born free, the color of her skin and her gender still allowed her to be taken advantage of. Thus, she came to better understand the world she lived in. Either she could fight against those who had power, or she could work with them and accept the limitations that race and gender imposed upon her. She decided to do both. I know I said I'm gonna stop on 17 where this thing is. She integrated herself with the Huzzies, making herself indispensable to their store. As a girl, she foraged the woods around the store for pokeberries, which she would mash and drain to make a dark purple ink for Grandma Huzzy to sell. She learned to keep the books and sweep and clean the store and sell to customers. I was always on the watch, and few people could get out of the store without buying something from me. She learned to read and write in her spare time and used her work in the store to learn about business and human behavior. So she got the education, not the formal education, but she got the practical. I have let books alone and studied men and women a great deal, she said. You can't learn all the book knowledge and all the human nature studied in a lifetime. You must slight one or the other. So she slighted books and studied capital, both human and financial. During her years with the Huzzies on Nantucket, Pleasant nursed a resentment of racism and slavery. When she wasn't working, she would venture south of Grandma Huzzy's shop through town, past Newton Fence to enter Nantucket's free black community. Okay, this is her makings. This is her come up story. Okay, the inhabitants of Newton were made up of black whalers, escaped slaves, and domestic servants. They were led by the town's most prominent citizen, Absalom Boston. Absalom was a well muscled man with a beard that stretched from his ears down his entire jaw with no mustache. He wore gold hoop earrings and his hair was coarse and pushed back into a pompadour. Absalom was black royalty in Nantucket. He was a descendant of the island's Indian natives and black slaves. His family was credited with having ended slavery on the island after his uncle Prince Boston had challenged the legality of slavery in Nantucket, sued for his freedom, and won. This is the second time I heard someone sue for their freedom and won. What's the name in the Macbeth? I don't want to get off topic. I think her name something Beth. She was also in Massachusetts, if I'm not mistaken, and she sued for her freedom and won as well. So they're saying his father sued, his uncle sued for his freedom and won. Absalom inherited money from his parents, who died when he was young, and used it to build one of the first structures in Newton. How many people knew that? And used where are we? A small shop in the clapboard house where he sold fishing equipment and groceries. In 1822, he bought and captained his own whaling ship called Industry, becoming the first black man in New England to own and lead a whaling outfit. Subsequently, he used his earnings to develop Newton by underwriting mortgages for the houses of free blacks. Are y'all hearing this? Along with Boston and other prominent black Nantucketers, Pleasant attended church and learned about abolition before venturing back to her employer on the white side of the fence. I'm going to pause here. I'm going to pause. Let me just look up Absalom real quick, and then I'll be satisfied for the day. Let me know your guys' thoughts on this. I'm going to look it up. Let's see what he looked like. Absalom. Oh. Why they got Absalom looking like this? Father, help us now. Yo, why they got Absalom? Who drew Absalom looking like this? Wait a minute. Let me click this right here. Yo, who drew Absalom with the earrings looking like this though? Let me look at the color version right here. That is not what I pictured when he described Absalom. Absalom did his thing though, Absalom, but why did they picture you like this? Let me see something real quick. Okay, there goes the wealthiest man in Nantucket. Why they keep drawing Absalom like this? Let me, let's see here. Absalom, Boston, Frederick Douglass, and me. You need a schoolhouse. I guess that's one of the schoolhouse. So there we go, peoples. We're gonna keep this one is about sorry, Mary Ellen Pleasant, but we are also getting a little bit of Frederick Douglass in here. We're getting a little bit of Absalom Boston in here. So this is gonna be interesting. Let me click this real quick. Hold on. I'm mad at them for drawing Absalom like that. Let's jump over here real quick. We cross-referencing, and then I'm going to call it a day. Let me know if you have the book, if you've been reading. Oh, I'll just put this here if somebody wants to come up and share their thoughts. You guys be really quiet. Yeah, really quiet. But I'll put that there if you want to share your thoughts. I'm going to look over here real quick, satisfy my curiosity, and then I'm going to go. Absalom Boston, United States mariner, first African American captain to sail a whale ship with an all-black crew in 1822. He was born in Nantucket, African American ex-slave father, and an Indian mother. His uncle sued. Oh, chill. It says his uncle, a slave named Prince Boston, was part of the crew of a 1770 whaling voyage, but refused to turn over his earnings to his white master. Instead, he went to court and won both his earnings and freedom, making him the first black slave to win his freedom in a U.S. jury trial. So not only did Absalom do his thing, his uncle was the first. I mean, where is all of this stuff in it's here clearly because they even have a Wikipedia article, but it's not being shared. You have the books, but you haven't read. No worries, we could do it together. Because these are some names that we can add in. We don't have to necessarily replace, but the way the things are repeated over and over as if these other things don't exist. These other names, these always stories don't exist. Look at the first person to sue and win their freedom, Prince Boston. That's something to talk about, right? And his nephew also comes along and is the first to own his own whaling outfit and employ melanated people in their town that they built. I mean, this is important stuff. Boston spent his early years working in the whaling industry, and by the time he reached 20, he acquired enough money to purchase property. 20 in Nantucket. 10 years later, he obtained a license to open and operate a public inn. He also started a hotel, basically, or a motel. So Absalom is over here also doing his thing. And I'm quite sure there might be some stuff still in Nantucket that, let me just look. Prince Boston. Prince Boston sues. He's like, I ain't giving you my money. I'm not giving you my money. In 1760, William Sween freed Prince's parents with the stipulation that each of their children remain in servitude to the age of 28. Look at that. Look at that. Let me see one more thing. Newton, Nantucket. I like to see how stuff come together. I like to see how. Is it still there today? Do the people talk about it? Hold on one second. I like to see how stuff connect. Newton. Newton. What's his name again? This is history. City of Newton. We got a picture, y'all. This was the city that they're describing. Hold on one second. This is how I was able to put stuff together because each clue opens up another world, right? Each thing that's mentioned, if it's factual, it opens up another a world for you to kind of put the pieces together. So it's describing. They took the pains of describing what the place was looking like when Frederick Douglass arrived, and how where what he had to pass to go through and to get to the other side where the melanated people lived, right? And so here's a picture. It says President Newton has its origins in mid 1630s as an early offshoot of Cambridge. Let's jump down. Newton's First Baptist Church, town meetings. Let me see here. Why you don't let me see the picture? So they built up basically. I clicked the picture, but it took me all the way in. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it here. That's interesting. We'll pick up on page 19 the next time we come reading this, and then hopefully we'll get more into her story. I'll try not to make it so late. When my eyes get tired, I tell y'all the words be dancing. So if you do have the book, and if you would like to contribute and read a chapter, a paragraph, just let me know. I'll share the link and you can come up and you can read as well. If you're like, I'm going to take a minute, take some water, you can come up and read if you have the book, and then we can make our way through it and just learn as we go. So that's very interesting. And let me know what you've learned and how you like it. And I'll be back later this week so that we can continue. All right, everybody have a blessed night. Like, subscribe, share, all that lovely good stuff. And share these names. Let me put some of these names in the box. I'll put some of these names below. Share some of these names. If you have young ones, give them little projects upcoming, the February that's upcoming. Give them little book reports. You can write a list of 1 to 10 and have them to pick one of the numbers off the list, and then have them to go and research somebody else. More than likely the school system is going to be like Marcus Garvey. They don't even really do Marcus Garvey. Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks. And right now is when to prepare them is to be able to give them some new names to go look up. Like, tell me who Absalom Prince is. Tell me who Frederick Douglass, because they do get a lot of Frederick Douglass too. Tell me who William Lord Garrison is, because even though he's not melanated, he's pivotal character to the story, right? Tell me, because you see, I was able to look these things up on Wikipedia. So these little children, tell me who Mary Ellen Pleasant is. These little children, they can get some more people into their catalog of who did what early on in this country, foundation of this country. Just some thoughts. So with that said, thank everybody for tuning in. And maybe we'll make a list by the time we're done with this, and it'll be something that, we can all learn and grow from. So with that said, everybody have a blessed night.